everyone. I'm Lou Fulton. I direct the STEPS Plus program at Institute of Transportation Studies at UC Davis. And that program has a number of research centers. And I am most involved directly with the Energy Futures Research Center, Energy Futures program that I direct. And I'd like to talk to you today about an important area of research that we are doing and cooperating with other centers such as the Plug-in Hybrid and Electric Vehicle Program, and also with the Policy Institute at UC Davis, and with other campuses of the UC system. And this is the project to work with Cal EPA on trying to understand and design an approach to reaching a carbon neutral transportation system in California by 2045, which is the state's target. The state created that target under the last governor, and it continues to try to understand how to reach that target across sectors. The study that we've been asked to do, along with UC Berkeley, UC Irvine, and UCLA, is to take a look at the transportation system, and in particular the road transportation system, cars and trucks and buses in particular, and what kind of a transition are we really talking about here to get to something very close to zero carbon emissions by 2045, and also what might it cost, and what are some of the policies we need to make that transition. So we're working away on that project. We've been working on it for about 6 or 7 months, and we're going to finish in November of this year of 2020. I think the report will be published in early 2021. And it's been a fascinating effort to work with others on this and develop a set of scenarios for achieving something close to carbon neutrality for transportation, or zero carbon emissions for transportation by 2045. We chose to use a multi-scenario approach, and our group at Energy Futures is leading the scenario development efforts. There's also a task team focused on detailed analysis of light-duty vehicles, and there's one on freight vehicles. There's a fuels team, so all these different task teams are working together, but I've been most involved with creating the overarching scenarios. And one of the interesting things is that we had created we called a central low carbon case that included having light-duty vehicle sales become 100% ZEV, zero emission, by 2040. And about 2 weeks ago, the governor, Gavin Newsom, announced that he wants to see the state reach 100% zero emission vehicle sales sooner, in 2035. We had that as a more aggressive scenario to reach 100% by 2035, but in a way that becomes a more important scenario now, now that he has directed through an executive order the ARB to figure out how to do that. And this study is sort of the first step of figuring out how to do that. So we're looking at that. It will be extremely challenging to go from our current something around 8 to 9% market share of zero emission vehicles to 100% in about 14 years. But we think it can be done. It also involves having truck sales become 100% zero emission. Well, it's not totally clear in the executive order, but at least by 2045, but probably sooner, as actually the truck clause is more geared toward all the trucks on the road being zero emission by 2045. So we're still sorting that out. But in any case, we will have such scenarios, and we will compare them to others that involve slower ramp ups of ZEV vehicles out into the future. But if those scenarios with slower ramp ups are also going to achieve zero or close to zero emissions in 2045, then of course something else needs to happen. In any case, if you have 100% ZEV sales in 2035, you're not going to have a complete turnover of the fleet by 2045. There will be internal combustion engine vehicles on the roads in 2045. and we need to decarbonize those as well. So another important part of the study is how to decarbonize fuel for those internal combustion engine vehicles. And of course, that ends up being probably biofuels or maybe what we call electrofuels that could be zero carbon liquid fuels. So we're looking at that too. And the farther back you push the ZEV target, so let's say ZEVs are only 100% in 2040 or 2045, the more liquid fuels you will have to decarbonize in the period between 2030 and 2045. And that turns out to be also a very big challenge. The amount of biofuels, especially advanced low carbon biofuels that you need to do that, rises fairly dramatically with each of those scenarios and is far higher than anything we use today in the state. It's even on the order of the kinds of numbers we use nationwide. And it would have to be from technologies that are mostly from cellulosic feedstocks in order to achieve the carbon intensity targets and make sure they're sustainable. So all of that is a big challenge that we're also looking at. So I think the study overall is looking into very important pictures of how we can achieve carbon neutrality in 2045 and getting into areas that have not really been studied that well, or at least a level of detail that's beyond anything that we or others have looked at, at this point. I also think the study is it won't have all the answers. We will take a crack at what we think these different scenarios are going to cost. I think there will be some interesting findings there. And then the policy aspects are going to be interesting. How do we make all this happen? And I think we're going to be able to say some interesting things, but I think it will also lead us to wanting to do deeper research on specific questions that get raised by this study. So we will, as all good researchers do, be recommending that more research is needed, and that could include a deeper biofuel study that, how do you achieve the liquid fuel targets suggested by this work? The rate of change of ZEV sales and the rate of ramp up of ZEV sales, which is sort of breathtaking. How do we make that happen? How do we get the infrastructure out there to support those vehicles, both electric and hydrogen vehicles? So I think it's going to be very interesting, both the study and then what we feel we need to do and what the state feels it needs to look at after this particular study is over. So that's the short version, and we will hopefully have a report to share with people within a couple of months. Thank you.